Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Act of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and board members, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting will do so by log off information.
So next up, open forum. Does any of the board members have anything they'd like to?
I would like to get rid of open forum on a going forward basis.
Okay.
I don't think it fully complies with the open meeting law because it does not reflect what the board is going to talk about
Okay.
in advance of the hearing, of the meetings. And if people want to talk about something, I think they should put it on an agenda. But I am not, we don't generally do anything on open forum, but I don't believe it's appropriate. I know the school committee deals with it in a way in which they literally let people come in and talk and then respond to nothing because they cannot respond to it because it hasn't been provided in a meeting notice and therefore doesn't comply with the open meeting law. I just think we should get rid of it.
Is there a way that we can sort of like an administrative something on the agenda so that we can kind of work through little things that do pop up that really aren't an agenda item?
I think we should put administrative issues on the agenda.
Okay. Going forward, maybe.
So that it reflects that we're going to do this, and so that anybody who wants to be here can do it, or anybody who wants to watch it on YouTube can do it. But the notion that there's some sort of free form at the beginning of this meeting, I don't think is appropriate.
Thoughts?
Is it something we can debate?
Yeah. Discussion.
Yeah, we can debate.
Yeah, we see both sides of it, as far as public access. Openness, I don't agree with the idea of canceling it completely, but I agree with the idea of modifying it. Perhaps we could reposition it as a call for agenda items for future meetings. And limit it to a single statement of one sentence.
Yeah, that's fine. Or quite frankly, I'm fine with open forum if what it means is that the public can come in here and say what they want to talk about to the planning board. That sounds fine to me. The problem is, and it'll be the same impediment that the school committee has all the time, is somebody will say something to you that you'd like to respond to, and you can't do anything about it.
We can't spot it. Right. We added it to conservation. We never had it for years, but we would see the select board do it. But it's exactly that. It's somebody can tell us something and we just have to take it under advisement and not respond, but we can add it to a future agenda.
Right. So, I mean, if we want to keep open forum, then I think open forum should be, does the public have anything they want to say?
Right. But that's almost like a public comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Wade. The only problem with keeping it as a public comment is gives the expectation to town folks that are coming that they may be able to have a substantive conversation with the board, and we can't do that during an open forum discussion. So to Nancy's point, to Wayne's point, if the town folk are coming and expecting substantive responses from us, then it needs to be an agenda item. But if we label it as open comments, then I suppose we could keep it.
I've watched many of the meetings and these open forum meetings where people tell town officials about what they think and what they think needs to be done, or sometimes they do it in a really impassioned way. And then you sit there and you go, thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable.
It's extremely uncomfortable, and I'm perfectly willing to sit here and do it, but the notion and quite frankly, I think if people want to come and talk, they should come and talk. But it's extremely uncomfortable to watch the school committee do it. I've watched it over and over and over again. I'm happy to keep open forum, but open forum shouldn't be, hey, does the planning board, do members of the planning board have something they'd like to lob out, and talk about? Because quite frankly, I don't think that's appropriate.
We don't usually have anybody from the public say anything, so maybe we can do away with it, but I would like to have some type of ability for people that do administrative things that do, I mean, I'd like to do that. That makes sense to me.
Do you have a new business item on your agenda? For conservation, we have open forum and then we have new business. So that's where something like that might fall.
How do they talk about it if it's just people can bring things up and talk about it, even though it's not technically on the agenda?
But anybody can call Emily and say, hey.
Yeah.
Can we put this on the agenda? And it's there.
Right.
Do we need to vote on this?
No, I mean, we
Another
can
conversation?
deal, you can either delete it from the next agenda or.
The chair can just work it out with Emily and myself, and for the next, moving forward.
Yeah.
Typically, the chair sets the agenda with her anyway, so really.
I don't think there's any requirement to have it. Like I said, we didn't have it for years.
Yeah, I frankly think it likely runs afoul of the open meeting.
Okay. All right, thank you for bringing that up, Wayne, for your input. All right, election of new officers. As we all know, Scott resigned last December, and so we need to typically when the chair steps down, the vice chair steps in. Since we planned, we will have instead of two members coming in, Gary, two members coming in after our election in March. We would reorganize, but Rebecca suggested we just go ahead and do that now. What's the question to start for the year? So do we have any thoughts on anybody? Is anybody interested in one of these positions? So we have three positions. We have chair, vice chair, and clerk. And the expectation of the clerk signs off on a lot of things. They did a presentation at town meeting. Chair runs the meetings, vice chair steps in when needed.
I think Jennifer's done an unbelievably good job as clerk.
I second that. She's not here.
And since she's not here, I would like to move to make her clerk on a going forward basis.
I would second that motion.
So Jen Turcott is.
Yeah, I guess we need to vote on that one. So we have a motion. Can I second? Can I second if I'm active chair? Okay, so somebody would have to second Wayne's motion. So second. Okay. Any discussion on Jen Turcott as clerk? All right, so we'll vote. All those in favor of Jen Turcott being clerk for this year. We'll need a roll call vote. Matt, we'll start with you. You'll say your name and.
Yep. Matthew Ray, aye.
Pat Carpenter, right?
Kristen Rapp, aye. Lauren Sarai, aye.
Wayne Dennison, on.
All right, do we have any thoughts on vice chair or chair? Anyone interested, thoughts?
I don't know if it's fair to nominate myself, but I would like to nominate you for chair.
Thank you. Thoughts, discussion, anybody else interested? Can I second? Sure. All right, we have a motion on the floor to move that Kristen be the chair. Any discussion? I will call for a roll call vote. I'm starting with you, Matt.
Yep. Matthew Ray, aye.
Pat Carpenter, aye.
Get that vote. Kristen Rapp, aye. Lauren Sarai, aye.
Wayne Dennison, on.
All right, then we have another chair, another position that would be for vice chair. Is anybody interested in that position?
I would like to do it.
You would like to do it? All right, anybody, do we have anyone else who might be interested?
I'd be willing to serve. I'd be, in terms of debate, Wayne, I know you have limited availability.
Oh, I don't want to debate it. If you want it, you can have it. I just want to be super candid on a going forward basis. I think this board needs to be much more proactive than this board has been. I also think that one of the areas in which it needs to be most proactive is in its zoning, in its zoning capacities. I candidly have about as much experience in the town of Duxbury and zoning as any human being in the town of Duxbury. That's why I suggested I did that, but if somebody else wants to do it,
We'll do it. Oh, so you're saying you would,
if Ted wants to do it.
I will second Wayne as a vice chair.
wait, you'll second, okay, now I'm confused, you're both are.
And so is there a motion?
I make a motion to appoint Wayne Dennison as vice chair of the planning board.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll second.
All right, so then we have a motion on the floor. Do we have any discussion? All right, so we'll call for roll call votes, starting with Matt,
Matthew Ray, aye.
Pat Carpenter, aye.
Kristen Rathbone.
Lawrence, Roy, I.
Wayne Dennison,
I probably should have asked before we voted. Do you see any conflict between being chair of the ZBA?
In fact, I dealt with this very particular issue on, when I talked to town council about it, and I do not believe there's a conflict.
Okay, I should have asked you that before, sorry. Okay, all right, congratulations. Looking forward to moving forward, so thank you all. All right, next up, administrative items. ZBA case 2024-25 for 290 Kingstown Way, I think it's at Kingstown Way. This is, oh, yes, this is the lit sign over at Duxbury Village. Our village of Duxbury, sorry. Do we have anybody here from representing Duxbury Village? Village of Duxbury, sorry, go ahead.
I'm Luke Kramer. I'm the executive director at the village.
Great, welcome, thank you. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
So this looks like a pretty straightforward case that the sign wasn't lit. Approval was never requested, but it has been lit.
Right.
And so now you're seeking approval.
Right.
Okay, so technically that goes before the ZBA, but it comes to us, it's sort of for a first pass for us to look at it and to offer any insight. Is there anything that you would like to say about it other than just summarize?
Just to summarize, actually came about because one of our residents complained that the sign was inadequately lit.
Okay,
Made a call to the buildings department. They did some research and found out that it had never been permitted.
Okay.
You're respectfully asking if we get permission to light the sign. I think it's common sense just for wayfinding.
yeah.
And we'd ask the,
Yeah.
the planning board to endorse that recommendation.
All right, well, we appreciate you coming forward. Appreciate that.
So you're asking forgiveness rather than permission?
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're gonna make it even stronger.
I think it's both, but
Do we have any discussion here on the board? Any questions?
The ZBA matters.
They are asking for us to endorse it, so any thoughts on that? So it's just deferring to the ZBA?
I will abstain from that vote.
Okay.
Simply because I have a vote on the CPA. But that said, it seems pretty routine.
Yeah. All right, any future discussion, so let's, do we have a motion on the floor to approve, defer this, or defer this generally, or defer this with endorsement to the ZBA? Anybody like to make
Do a motion to endorse.
You would like to second that?
Second,
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion on the floor to endorse with, to defer with endorsements. Any discussion? All right, we'll call for a roll call vote.
Legislative.
Please.
One comment, and it's not for the planning board, it's for the ZBA, it's really for the applicant that, there is, scientific information coming to light that, nighttime lights are correlated with an increased incidence of Alzheimer's, and that nighttime lighting is also a form of pollution. And so, while I agree with the wayfinding objective and the fact that it should be lit, if it could be downlit instead of uplit, that would reduce light pollution. I just offer that as an observation.
Thank you. All right, well,
Particularly interesting in light of the fact there's a memory care unit there.
yeah, it's sort of ironic.
Isn't it?
All right, any other discussion? All right, we'll call for a roll call vote, starting with Matt,
Matthew Ray, aye.
Hey, Carpenter, aye.
Kristen Rapp, aye.
Oh, sorry, I.
Wayne Dennison abstained.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, next up is 104 Tremont Street Site Plan Approval, a deadline extension request. I believe this is the Wimmeyer property, is that correct? Anybody here from the Wimmeyers? Rebecca, do you have any thoughts or input on this, or
I believe they needed extra time,
together?
to get some consensus,
Yeah.
yeah.
So did the MBTA communities law already extend the time on this?
I don't understand,
So there were a whole bunch of revisions that came through around, the ADU law. And one of the ADU law provisions, at least as I remember it, had permit extension in it.
for Tremont Street,
Not
Right.
specifically.
What do you mean, that it didn't allow, or it affected how long it could?
So during COVID, there was an emergency act that dealt with all kinds of public permitting that kicked them for like a couple of years. And I thought the new ADU law had some provision in it that also dealt with permit extensions.
I have to look back at that. But I'm not sure, I just thought that they wanted the extension so that they could build some consensus with the owners or, the
Yeah,
abutting.
the only reason I'm asking this is I'm not positive that they need it.
Oh, I see what you're saying now, yeah. I'm not sure, but I can look it up.
You mean that it might have already automatically been extended?
I
Because
don't
of-
remember, there's a permit extension aspect to the new ADU law that went through. And I don't remember the Paul, do you know the detail?
Within the last 6 months,
Yeah.
they extended for another 2 years. Orders of conditions from conservation, I assume special permits and other sort of permits from other regulatory boards.
I just remember
Governor
seeing.
Healy did it again last November, December time.
I think there's a real
I
possibility
didn't
they don't
see
need
that.
relief.
Okay,
Nancy was here. she-
no, I don't mind at all. So do you wanna just defer it or, in,
I don't
or
think-
vote to extend it just in case?
Well,
or-
when does it expire?
February 15th.
Yeah,
When's our next meeting?
Well,
27, so we can get an answer before then if you.
Yeah, let's get it.
Want to just
that would be
defer
my
it?
preference, because I don't, I think there's a provision
I can
in
look
there
it
that
up.
kicks it.
I don't know.
that'd be great, thank you. All right, next up, meeting minutes. Any edits from the board?
I move that the minutes be adopted as drafted.
There's one omission I'd like to correct in the other business subject was the end of the minutes when we mentioned the HLC ADU letter. It was noted that the comment period was December 20th to January 10th. I think it might be useful for that to appear.
So to the minutes as amended with that information.
I'd like to revise my motion to amend the minutes as suggested by Tay.
Did you say January 10th?
January 10th, and just passed.
Thank you. Any other comments, edits? All right, so we second. They give me a second. Can I second?
Yes.
Yeah. Second, good. All right, any discussion? No? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and call for a roll call vote.
Matthew Ray, aye.
Hey, Martin, right?
Kristen Rapp, aye.
Wayne Dennison, aye.
Next up, Sunrise Pond Road, 333 Franklin Street subdivision lot release. Do you have anybody here from?
Yes, that would be me, Paul Pedro.
Hey.
How are you? Yes, we'd like to, release the 2 additional lots at Sunrise Pond subdivision. You should have a notarized performance security deposit of money that I gave to Emily earlier this week. Late last week. There's 2 amendments to this deposit of money that we need to discuss, or that needs to be brought up. I guess you guys need to vote on it. One is an extension of the deadline. So the deadline for the majority of the work that's remaining is paving, putting the final coat of pavement on the road. The existing deadline for this work is March 29th of 2026, 2 years from when the subdivision was approved. I'm asking to extend that to 2 years from the date of the modification to the approval, which was July 9th. Simply because asphalt plants don't open until April, in the first couple of weeks of April. So trying to get a road binder put down, or I'm sorry, the final coat of the road put down in March is not achievable. So I'm asking for that extension of that deadline to July 9th. And then the other item, the bond, the check for the amount of work to be done. I did, when the proposed work of that was defined by the town engineer, and came up with an original bond amount. I've done one of those items and he reviewed it and changed the amount of the bond. So that's the amount that's updated in the performance secured deposit of money document that has been signed and notarized by myself and in your possession. So so yes, we're here to ask for the release of those 2 lots, for those 2 changes of those 2 conditions.
I think we have 3 motions. One's to extend the subdivision deadline to July 9th, 2026, then to set the performance bond amount to $19,680.
Yep.
As described, an estimate dated December 9th, and then to move to approve the performance bond and release lots A and B from the planning board company.
Correct.
Get it all. Board members, do we have any questions, discussion?
I just, I don't see any great impetus to extend the deadline that's in 2026. It's a 2026 deadline. If the applicant is having trouble complying with that deadline in 2026, they have every opportunity to come back. But I just don't understand why we're being asked a year and a half early to extend the deadline.
Making plans, kind of knowing right now that he wants to build one house, and then go on to the next house, but the asphalt plan.
Well, but the asphalt plant's gonna be open in April.
Right, and the current deadline is the 29th of March. So I can come back, the current deadline is 29th of March. I'd be happy to come back and see you, Wayne, and, again, and ask for an extension later, but it just makes sense that if I can't get the trucks there with asphalt in March, I need an extension. If you don't want to extend it to July 9th, that's fine. You can extend it 30 days, but I can't put the road in if the asphalt plants aren't open. So I'm fine if you want me to come back in a year, but it's just the way things work.
Yeah.
Nothing's gonna change for you, I imagine.
I don't imagine. It's the way we live in New England, and the asphalt plant shut down around Thanksgiving, and they usually open when the temperature raises about 45 degrees, which is usually middle, depending on the year, but beginning to middle of March, April.
There's no chance of getting it done earlier in November.
Trying to get it done before Thanksgiving is going to be a little challenging. Well, again, you want to try to get as much construction done as possible, so if there's a lot of heavy equipment coming back and forth on it. I prefer not to do it before Thanksgiving of this year, but that's just the way things are kind of lining up.
Yeah, I mean, you did mention this the last time we discussed the project as well, so we could anticipate this. And in the interest of efficiency, I don't see the need to put it out and come back and repeat the exercise. If we're aware of the issue, we can dispose of it. Why wouldn't we?
You can kind of blame that on me. I recommended that he kill two birds with one stone and be efficient, so. That was me. I made that recommendation. Emily did ask me, should we do it now or later? And I said now, so. I'll take the. You guys can do whatever you want, but I did recommend that.
I appreciate it. Again, again, just trying to be efficient, not have to come back, but I suspect if I could come back. If July 9th is, I picked July 9th because it was, again, it's you can point to it in the, that was when the condition 2 was rescinded, so the note of the planning board approval was changed on that date. That's why I picked that date. But if you want to just push it out 30 days or 60 days, give me a chance to get it done, then that's fine too.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
If the board is inclined to just push it, and, the town planner has suggested pushing it. I mean, then we'll push it. I'd like to have whatever incentive is in place that we can keep in place to get these projects completed as soon as possible. That's the only reason that I suggested that we wait.
Would you prefer to pull the deadline in? Would that? be
Yeah,
more
I
comfortable with
mean,
that, or is more just-
whether it's July 9th or June 8th or May 7th, I don't think that makes a whole lot of difference. It seems to me that we had set a deadline, and it would be nice for developers to work towards the deadlines that were established. But the board is,
I have no issue with that. It's just the circumstances of when you set it to your deadline in March on road work, it's kind of challenging in the town of Duxbury, Massachusetts. However you guys want to handle it, I'm fine with it. I just don't see it happening in March, before March of 26th, so we'll have to amend it at some point. Or, well, if it's not amended and I don't achieve the goal, then what happens?
I don't think it gets you on back.
Then you guys do it with the money that you have.
And we would have to wait till the asphalt plant's open.
I'd much rather manage it myself than have the town do it.
All right, any other thoughts? All right, do we have a motion to, motion on this?
Kristen, how many motions do we need? Do we need to-
I'm off the door.
I'll, as described previously, we'll move to extend the subdivision deadline for Sunrise Pond Road, and I'll change the date to May 29th. Move it up. Set the performance bond amount to $90,680 as described in PGB Engineering's estimate dated December 9th, 2024. Move to approve the performance bond and release lots A and B from the planning board covenant. Okay, all three.
was it A and B or A and C? Because A and C are listed in the.
It's A and C.
Okay,
Oh.
that's incorrect. It's for
Yeah, I think it's part of A and C.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna second. Thanks, motion with the amendment that we're talking about A and C.
Any discussion? I'll call for a roll call vote. Matt,
Matthew Ray, aye.
Guy Carpenter, aye.
Kristen Mouth, aye.
Lauren Sarai, aye.
Wayne Dennison,
Thank you very much.
aye.
May 29th, right?
May 29th, 2026.
So you guys change the date of the document.
We'll send it to you.
I'm sorry?
Yes, we will.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else on your presentation?
It's your call, so
All right, next up,
football game's on the date.
yeah,
Next football game is on the date.
yeah, all right. Next up, Parkside lot release lots A, B, and C to approve for approving performance bond, releasing the lots.
That will be deferred. Because
Oh,
we
this
don't
is the
have,
one that will be
yeah,
deferred,
that's
yeah.
the one we don't have the paperwork.
Great.
They didn't do that time.
Okay, all right, next up after that is conceptual review, 51 Wadsworth Road, and I believe that's the one which we have, plans.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try, yeah.
You got the backup if you
Which one do you have first?
Existing conditions, you want.
Oh, there we go. Here it is. It's a Wednesday. It's not very big.
We got several other ones from the topo lines.
Is this the right one?
Yeah, topo's
Yeah.
are those.
Oh,
Right, but
That, you know, I'm sorry about the
Fine,
corners.
fine,
Be careful,
me,
be
that's
careful. of the corners. I can't make it bigger.
Good evening, I'm Paul Brogdon with Seacoast Engineering, and I did write the letter last week to Kristen as the vice chair. So with all due respect, if you could just mentally change it, remove the vice word and as the chairman, congratulations. Okay. Here this evening to go over a quick review of a conceptual plan that we're working on for Eric J. Pontiff, Wadsworth LLC. Eric Pontiff is a builder in town and Cranberry Bog owner in Plymouth and Carver. And he has recently purchased the property at 51 Wadsworth Road, which has been a vacant parcel forever, from what we believe, okay? And looking at it, reviewing it with the wetlands, the uplands, satisfactory percolation testing up front. When Mr. Pontiff bought the property, there is the potential to convert this lot from 4.51 acres into potentially 2 buildable lots, each with 200 feet of frontage, 40,000 square feet of contiguous upland, as such. And I think for everybody in the board, the last time I was here was for a similar 2-lot subdivision on Haddon Hill Road. Similar challenges, different circumstances, of course, but a lot of the, let's just say, the requirements that we have to demonstrate to the planning board that it meets all the planning board rules and regulation requirements, conservation issues, etc., basically are compliant here. The letter that I wrote last week introducing the project basically highlights a couple items that, you know, we have about 325, 325 feet of frontage on the frontage side here. And I think if you go back 40, 50 years in town prior to the current zoning, the Wadsworth Road area was half-acre lots versus the 40,000 square feet that we've had for a long time. But anyway, this is 4.51 acres. It's basically the last lot that's been there and been vacant under a couple ownerships over the last 40 to 50 years. But when you look at it in the engineering and primarily the survey work that's been done, we can see that there is, you know, the potential again for 2 normal lots, if you will. Okay.
So if it has 325 feet of frontage, where's the other 75 feet of frontage?
It's. So at the cul-de-sac, that similar to what we did on Haddon Hill Road, we created the additional frontage to allow us to create 200 feet of frontage for each of the two lots.
Sorry, I was trying to blow it up for you. That's a little better,
Yeah.
that better.
Okay, so you can see reviewing sheet 2 that we basically have one lot on the left side that has 54,000 square feet of upland and 48,000 square feet of wetland. The second lot has 40,000 square feet of upland, 40,310, and 46,722 plus or minus square feet of wetland. Obviously, there's a good amount of wetlands on this parcel of land. The surveys are out there a number of times just trying to delineate the wetlands line that was flagged by Brad Holmes from ECR Incorporated in Plymouth. And basically the square footages you see are the surveyor's rendering of, again, 40,000 square feet of contiguous upland for each of the two lots. And the frontage for two lots where we have about 262 feet of frontage for one lot and 240 feet plus or minus of frontage for the second lot. When we look at what we have here, again, looking at,
Did we approve that? Not me, we, but the planning board approved that for Hardin Hill?
yes, sir.
It's been approved for many years too. I had that in my neighborhood, which was developed in 97.
Man, I'd love to ask town council about
Me too.
And obviously, I think it was like 40 years ago, the planning board approved a similar one, Alpheus Way on Alden Street across from tennis courts and library.
it. It just seems so artificial. And just, it seems incredibly artificial because that cul-de-sac is only getting used by the two people who own the real property. It's not as if it is part of a public way in any meaningful way.
Right.
I quite frankly, I appreciate this. And we had a similar one come in a while back where very, very smart, very many people continue to come up with creative ideas. But I would love to see what town council says about it.
Well, we're more than happy to
Yeah.
hand it over to our surveyors who are going to finish the work. And actually, outside the subject here, but the Hardin Hill property was basically endorsed by our attorney at that point in time, was a former member of the zoning board, if that helps, Kathy Muncy. So her idea, her homework and research, the same sort of philosophy, the same sort of design parameters that were successful on Hardin Hill Road are being utilized here as well. So, okay. But anyway, this is where we are today. Again, it's purely conceptual at this point in time. And I think if you look at the positive feeling of what we're trying to do here, we're looking at, you know, a lot of maintaining of the natural resources that are out there right now. Each lot would have its own driveway. We would not have to clear cut the 50-foot right of way in here and add an 8-inch water main. So you'll see in the second half of our letter that we have about 6 or 7 requested waivers, at least at this conceptual stage, similar to what we did with the Hardin Hill property, to basically not need a common driveway going in with the cuts and fills, the normal drainage requirements that a 4-lot subdivision or 3-lot, 4-lot subdivision would require here. Again, each lot would have its own driveway, its own water service, and basically survive on its own, again, with the 200 feet of frontage that is presently shown on the plan from the surveyors. Okay.
So, you mentioned waivers for environmental impact and clear cutting and such. I'm looking at imagery from Google Maps and it shows a heavily wooded lot. Is that not the case?
Correct.
It
It's
is
very,
heavily
it's
wooded.
very wooded. That's why, again, a single family home would carve out X amount of square feet of clearance. If it met the planning board's requirements, we would need a permit because we
It's
exceeded
gonna
the
be more
threshold.
than 30,000 square feet.
For each of the lots, hopefully not. We haven't got to the point of a formal site design and the meets and bounds of what's going to be proposed to be cleared. Okay. Obviously, we don't have to clear cut a significant portion of the land. It's just a matter of what's minimally needed to construct the house with the appurtenances, the infrastructure, and everything else to complete it.
So
But so if we divide it into two lots, operatively, you're getting 60,000 square feet of clear cut before you need a permit.
Correct. We do have to get creative here. Okay. And it took the surveyors a while to get to this point in here to make sure that we had enough information conceptually again to come before you people. We've been working on this for a couple months. Okay.
What was the tricky part? Because of, there was so much wetlands and it was,
Yeah, the wetlands is very extensive in the back portion, backs up to Ocean Woods Drive. Again, it's raw land. Back in August, September, when we started, you couldn't see from the Wadsworth Road. You could see in 40, 50 feet to where the perk tests were done, but everything else was basically dense, very dense. Now it's different, of course, but at least at that point in time, when the leaves were still there, it was quite thick, obviously.
You know, I've got to tell you, Paul, frankly, I'm very skeptical about the request for waivers for environmental impact and frontage, because as you know, it's a steeply graded lot. Topography falls directly to a tributary to the bay.
Correct.
So any construction on this lot is going to increase drainage. You can take the trees out, you can put hard surfaces in. It's going to have a major impact on that waterway. So to say it doesn't need environmental, that doesn't really.
Well, what I meant was the environmental requirements of the subdivision requirements themselves, the 50-foot right of way. We would still have to go for 2 permits with Board of Health, of course, Conservation Commission, and the erosion issues are critical with them for the 50-foot setback from the wetlands line and the 100-foot. So pervious, impervious issues would be of primary emphasis for review by the Conservation Commission. And basically, what we're proposing for the waivers is only within the first X amount of feet for the right of way.
Yeah,
Each lot stands on its own individually with the other regulatory boards in town. And I agree, it's a challenge.
so Tag, what do you think if they've removed the required stormwater report, the required landscape plan, required an environmental impact plan, erosion sediment control plan?
Yeah, because I would think that those are resources that the other boards would rely upon. So otherwise, we're asking them to essentially engage in this type of work that the planning board typically does to get the engineering done.
We're just here to conceptually run the
I am, so I'm
project.
trying to work on the concept.
We're not here to vote
Exactly.
anything, trust me.
Yep.
Okay, but again, our philosophy is if they were single family lots, the driveway, as I put in the letter, would be 10 to 12 feet in width. The water service would be down the edge of one of those, the electrical service, the gas, whatever.
Yeah, scale down.
Would be
It's not a
would be
subdivision.
needed.
I understand.
We would not clear cut really anything within the cul-de-sac because each driveway would be probably off of Wadsworth Road as far apart as necessary to provide maximum safety for vehicles and traffic there. So
So you wouldn't clear cut anything within the cul-de-sac, although the cul-de-sac counts as a public way for frontage?
based on the rules and regulations, we need the frontage for that.
Okay.
Again, there's no like a 3-lot driveway going in or a 4-lot subdivision. Not to bring in another circle in here, but when you approve the Holy Family project for the 3 lots off the single driveway, they need access off this driveway to provide access to the 3 new lots. We don't need that here. It's very different. Okay. But we have the luxury here of dealing with the natural frontage of each of the 2 lots off of Wadsworth, of course, to bring in the entire infrastructure, within the right of way itself of Wadsworth.
Let's just, in terms of working with the concept and exploring, right, this is what we're doing. Let's imagine a point in time in the future where there have been driveways installed, time has passed and the 2 owners who have responsibility for the right of way, it's a shared resource for the 2 property owners, make a decision they'd like to pave it.
Pave,
Create the right of way as a paved surface connected to the public way as drawn. If they implement the plan as drawn.
You're saying basically create a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, well, they're authorized to do so by this plan, are they not?
They're allowed to.
but there's no driveway proposed and no road on the plan that.
Oh, yeah, it's an
would
individual.
still have to come back to the planning board
Yeah.
for ultimate approval here. Why they would want to do it and spend the money and the time
Not
for,
about the why, it's just an if question.
But the cul-de-sac absent being paved sounds, it's mythical.
Mhm.
Rebecca has, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
Has town council weighed in on our ability or the petitioner's abilities to create a cul-de-sac to kind of get around the required 200 feet of frontage for the two lots? You know, I'm concerned of precedent setting and then plans the board may have rejected in the past. Rebecca, has town council weighed in at all on that? Because I think as somebody, I forget, on the board mentioned earlier at the beginning of the discussion, without the cul-de-sac, they're not, I think my math was about 325 feet of frontage.
25, 26.
No, I haven't run this by council, but I certainly can.
Yeah, no,
And when is the last time this has been done? The 90s?
I mean, it was done in my neighborhood, 97. It was done, we did it on Hardin Hill. We've done it a couple other times. But when I think kind of maybe going to where Wayne, where you might be going, is we're concerned is that there are all these kind of odd shaped parcels around Duxbury. We're going to have more and more requests of these, where people are going to want to sandwich in homes.
Yeah.
And we're going to have these interesting access points. And so it might be helpful to, because to Matt's point, we may already have a precedent, or are we creating more? Question mark.
We're cementing precedent.
well, but my view is there is no precedent.
Or maybe-
Every single one of these decisions stands on its own. And there's no reason that we had collectively erred previously, that we have to bring that error into the future over and over and over again because we screwed it up the first time. And I hear this argument all the time about there's a precedent for this, there's a precedent for that. And yeah, you cannot act irrationally, you cannot act capriciously, but the mere fact that we did it before doesn't make you act irrationally. You're allowed to change your mind. And I'm very much of the mind that the town council should look at these kind of proposals, because I understand what a paper street is, but this to me looks like a very sophisticated and smart proposal, but a proposal that frankly takes what ought to be one building lot and turns it into two, which doubles the amount of clear cutting that can be done absent permitting, which doubles the number of ADUs that can go up. And it just strikes me as something that's worth evaluating through town council.
Great. I think that might be a worthy conversation. Wayne, do you mind if I ask you some more questions though? So how is it so you're saying if it's just one lot and it's got less than 400 linear feet of frontage, it's technically right now only one house can be built. But if it's so then only 30,000 acres can be clear cut. So you're saying that if you double that, put two houses on, then it becomes 60. And is that your primary concern?
Well, so this board has to approve anything, clear cutting of over 30,000 square feet of real property on any given lot. Once you get to making this two lots, operatively, you've doubled that number. And you're talking about a fairly wooded lot to begin with.
Do we have the power also then to restrict it though?
Well, there are a lot of, there's a whole provision in the bylaw as to what we can do relative to requiring a tree survey and all kinds of other activities that I see these projects that, largely just bulldoze. And frankly, I don't think that that's consistent with what we ought to be doing. And my concern is that you make a pull a building permit for one lot, for one house on this lot tomorrow. Right? So the only thing we're talking about is whether you get two lots here.
I understand, I appreciate the comparison, with Hardin Hill and theme is similar, it's waterfront, cul-de-sac, This is much more intensive and invasive and disruptive than that proposed project was, because you already had houses on those properties. Kind of moving them around, this is brand new. So it's very problem.
But as far as I'm concerned, it's great that the applicant came in, expressed what they're proposing to do, and we can send it up to town council says that it's all copacetic. I guess the answer is we'll do it.
So once we have that, sounds like we want to defer, maybe come back, to our next meeting.
We're not gonna go too far, too fast here until we obviously gather some more information. If that info is coming from town council, that's perfectly advisable, and it is January, so we have plenty of time at this time of the season, if you will.
How does the board feel about the waivers? Matt, could you hear me? I asked if you had any thoughts on the waivers?
No, I mean, do we want to wait until we get some feedback back from town council on the questions that have been raised tonight, or do we want to move forward on waiver request? I mean, are we putting the cart before the horse a little bit?
Good question.
And
I was just thinking that since we're in the information gathering, would it help if anybody had any strong opinions, but if you think it would be better to wait, we can do that too.
my sense is that we'll consider the waivers after the town council has weighed in. I think the waivers are something worth discussing, but quite frankly, if the whole project is infirm in some way, why are we getting into it?
That's fun. Any other thoughts, questions? No?
I'm not saying, it's not our intent to clear cut anything here. We have 325 to 326 feet of frontage. If we had 150-foot zoning frontage, we wouldn't be here tonight. Okay?
Right.
And as engineers, and I think as town officials, all of us, to put a driveway in a single-family house when you have 150 feet of frontage without a cul-de-sac, you can do. When you look at the homes on Wadsworth and Arrowhead and Indian Trail right now, where they don't have 200 feet of frontage, this subdivision has lasted over 50 years. And it looks good, homes have been updated, and it's a nice, desirable family neighborhood. All we're trying to do is take the last lot in this area and basically develop it with due diligence to the regulations that are in place today. We're not gonna put in a 40B with 8 units per acre. We could put in 20 units here. That's not our choice. Obviously, it would never happen, but it's still something that, you know, the owner is entitled to look at reasonable development of the property based on the regulations that are in place. As we said before.
Well, I'm gonna just tell you this, and you and I have known each other a long time, I'm just gonna say it. Any applicant who comes in and says, hey, I can otherwise do a 40B, okay, great. You know, great, that's your right under state law, but that threat that comes before these boards over and over and over again, I think is inappropriate.
Attorney Dennison, I just said it because it was fresh on my mind. I had no intent to antagonize anybody, to be a threat to anybody or anything. And quite frankly, Eric Pontiff has never brought those two words before me. Okay, I'm just looking at it from an objective development of what could be there. Okay, that's all. I apologize if I said the wrong words, but it is what it. I
It's
said
over
it.
and over and over again.
Okay.
Developers come in and say, well, you give me this or I'm gonna do a 40B. And frankly, if you're gonna do a 40B, do a 40B. We'll go through the whole process.
This is the thing, that there are a lot of different options.
I'm just not enamored of, give me what I want or I'm doing a 40B.
And then just to pick up on your term of objectivity, I'm very objective about this. The 75-foot, half acre was the standard years ago, and it no longer is.
Mhm.
It's 200 feet now, and this is essentially a request for a variance. So if you want a variance, ask for a variance instead of gaming the system. That's my objective perspective on it.
Again, Ted, I don't clear cut lots for
No,
my
it's not
clients
clear
at
cut.
all.
No.
We clear what we have to. And you look at the subdivisions that are going in, yeah, they'll clear cut the 50 feet because they can do it. That's not our intent here.
Okay.
No, I mean, they're gonna come before us and say, I've got a lot and I don't have the 2 feet, I'm not even gonna bother with the paper cul-de-sac and can you just give me a variance that we?
The variances are
Is that good?
under state law are
Yeah.
very, very difficult to establish. You've got to show some unique aspect of the topography or the soil condition or the shape of the lot. You've got to show that it's not economically developable otherwise, and in all candor, the likelihood of getting a variance from the ZBA is slim to none.
Okay, because of that, your hands are tied. to this.
There's a state law
Okay.
that dictates the standard, and the standard is very, very high. And quite frankly, this piece of property is fully developable as a single family lot
Yeah.
right this second.
Right.
I don't see how it would ever get a variance request.
Explain, please, for the clarification. Any other questions, thoughts? Mark, well, thank you for.
Thank you very much.
having
Appreciate your comments.
conversation. Appreciate it.
Have a good night. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have, A&R 2024-05 for 23 Eagles Nest Road. Do we have anybody for that property? Okay, hang on, we'd like to, is there anything you want to, do you have anything you want to show or?
You suppose we could bring the plan up on the screen?
that and say-
Yep, give me 1 minute.
Good evening, I'm Freeman Boynton, and I am representing Nick Grisilli this evening. I think this is the other property that, Wayne was thinking about. We tried to do a little lollipop out here. It's kind of my personal opinion that the reason why ours looks so distasteful is because we need a lot more variances. We didn't have as much land. We didn't have the room to create the full lollipop. We weren't able to meet the radius of the turns and the diameter of the cul-de-sac. We had just kind of slung an arc across the front of the property. And I agree, it was not something that you folks were interested in doing. And it was suggested at the time that we create a non-buildable lot and a buildable lot. And which is an A&R, and that's what we'd like to do. We've taken the existing house and and taken 200 feet of the frontage and kept the existing house on that lot. And we're creating a non-buildable lot right there with hopes that somewhere down the road, the neighbor who has frontage on Eagles Nest as well as Marshall Street will want to get together with us and create the frontage that we need to do so. This is a touchscreen, isn't it? Or-
Yes.
What do you need me to do?
I
Okay.
noticed Paul hit it with his pointer and he was moving around. No, that's fine.
I think that's as far up as I can
I
go.
was just playing it.
Oh, okay.
So that's simply all we're doing.
Dr. Freeman, did you say so in the future though, just to kind of to bring us back to refresh again? So if you combine the lots in the future with the one to the right, then in theory. the
Correct.
first one on the left is non-buildable.
Yeah,
but you
we're-
combine
we're-
it With the other one, eventually doesn't.
Well,
quite-
we're left with 120 feet on this
Right,
non-buildable lot. And this gentleman has a couple hundred feet of frontage there and a couple hundred feet of frontage here. And so if they could potentially create two buildable lots here.
right now it's not buildable.
Correct.
In the future. it would
And
be
yes,
buildable.
exactly. That's why we're doing this.
And so the mere fact that it shows on the plan as non-buildable does not mean it's non-buildable.
You'd have to combine the two lots.
Right, I mean, it may very well be non-buildable, but just because it's listed on a plan as non-buildable doesn't make it non-buildable.
Well, it doesn't meet the zoning bylaws, so I
Right,
don't
that's
think
the issue.
so you can't get a building permit.
Right, but I just want I just want everybody to understand, the mere fact that it says non-buildable on that plan
That's
doesn't
true.
mean it's non-buildable.
That's true. We could do a 40 feet.
Don't say that word.
He's already aware of that particular issue with it.
Um,
I take offense to it also.
Dr. Freeman, though, on the plan, it says 57,000 feet upland. So isn't upland okay to build on? So how is this not buildable?
Because
Because it
it
doesn't
lacks the
have-
It
front.
doesn't have front.
It lacks the front.
Got it.
And we tried that. We,
Okay. Okay, I understand. Thank you. And since this is an A and R, technically, this is almost like a courtesy, so thank you, because we can't actually, we can't approve it, it's just a courtesy that you're coming forward, so thank you. We still vote on it though, right?
Yeah, we signed it.
Yeah, he's signed the Mylar.
Yeah,
We gotta sign a Mylar if we're
Yeah.
gonna do it.
yeah,
Um,
but he doesn't have to, but we.
he doesn't have to ask it. He doesn't even have to ask for an A and R.
Yeah.
According to the state law. He can just declare 2 lots if he wants to.
That was gonna be my point, Kristen. I mean,
Right.
do we need to see, we don't even need to sign anything. They can go ahead and subdivide this lot now and create it into 2 separate lots. Separate the ownership and they've got one parcel that's non-buildable until they can acquire more frontage from the abutting parcel. I'm not sure that the planning board needs to sign anything.
Well, the only reason that we have to sign it is if they come in and ask for an A and R endorsement and it complies with the A and R requirements, then they've asked for it and we have to endorse it.
Any questions for?
I don't have any questions.
No, I'm fine.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the A and R. Or make it official.
I would just like to amend your motion to say that we will endorse the A and
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Give it, you want to instruct.
Yeah.
I'll
R.
second the motion
Okay.
in a minute.
Any discussion? All right, we'll call for a roll call vote. This is to endorse A and R. Matthew,
Matthew Ray, I.
Jack Carpenter, right?
Kristen Rapp, aye. Lawrence, right, aye.
Wayne Dennison, aye.
All right, thank you.
thank
Do you
you.
have the Mylar?
I don't, I was
No.
just
That's what we're
asking
just
if you
talking
had it.
about.
I don't have it in Emily's instructions. You guys are gonna have to bear with me, she's out sick today.
All right, so we can sign it the next time we're out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you need it before
That's not
then?
a
Do you
big,
need it, like now?
Well, they were a little anxious, but we could,
She'll
when's
be
the
in
next meeting?
tomorrow.
Couple of weeks or?
The
2 weeks.
27th.
Okay.
Is that, if you want us to
No,
sign it?
I think, what do you think, Lucy?
Well, they want to get this listed as soon as possible, the house lot.
Can you guys come in and sign it if we leave it? And then-
I'll come by and sign.
Then you just need, I think, how many we need, just probably 4?
I actually think you can just sign it now. We
Scott
Yeah,
had,
Scott did that a couple
we
weeks
had a
ago.
vote on that.
That's been done, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can sign it Thursday.
Yeah, you can, yeah. And you just write on behalf of the planning board.
Okay, all right. We
Yeah.
just make me.
We voted on that.
That's all that.
I think Val signed it once.
You know what, I'm not texting her, I'm gonna wait till tomorrow. Sorry, I'm talking to myself.
We'll get it.
Okay, thank you very
We're
much.
gonna get it done for you.
Great,
We'll be in touch.
let us know.
All right,
Thank you very much.
thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I already have a call about.
Let's just keep them in the loop.
Oh, okay, good, okay. I didn't know if I could help you.
Okay, all right, PV inputs on the 2025 technical assistance grant from Old Colony Planning Council. This is some information that Rebecca shared with us. I don't think anybody had a chance to read that yet. But this is regarding, we have, there's a memo attached here. We have an opportunity to apply for grants and Rebecca's suggesting 4 different options. One would be to grant to help update the housing strategy in the master plan. The second would be to provide help with the general community outreach. Third would be to help provide an impact analysis on the MBTA community zoning or similar zoning. And the fourth would be to draft a new bylaw for all school in the area. So Rebecca, can we apply for all 4 or do we need to pick?
You can apply for all 4, but I think to have a stronger application, I would focus on
Don't
one,
we already have a
maybe
whole square
2.
grant?
We have a grant, but remember we changed the scope to do the traffic study and the high level overview of the wastewater. So if we wanted to continue, we could apply for technical assistance to get the bylaw done after those studies are complete, because we don't have enough, because we switched the scope around, remember?
Right, but I'm very concerned that we're gonna have to know what the result of the technical analysis of the traffic study and the wastewater is before any zoning.
We don't have to do
It-
it.
Yeah, I think it's premature.
Yeah, we don't have to do it. These are ideas based on my conversation with OCTC and also just observations. since I've been
I am
here.
on the Halls Corner Working Group, and Rebecca and I worked to get this thing, to make sure that state funding continued to come in a way that is consistent with the, current grant. But I think trying to figure out what the zoning ought to be is,
Yeah, cross it off the list.
I don't think it makes any sense right now.
Yep, these are just ideas and I am looking for input and that's good input. I just haven't been here long enough. I don't have a lot of institutional knowledge and, you know, the planning council kind of, you know, helped guide me a little bit, but even they don't have any like recent projects that they're doing with the town. So I just didn't want to let this deadline go by, without
that's
at least
fine.
trying to apply for some type of technical assistance. So whatever
So-
you guys want to do.
So we're invariably gonna need some input on MBTA communities. I mean,
Yeah.
the law is enforceable, that not in its current regulation.
Right.
It was. So I mean, I definitely would think that we would want whatever assistance we could get there.
Yeah, and that's a very strong application. She indicated anything that's geared toward housing specifically going towards MBTA is, you know, she couldn't tell me it was guaranteed, obviously, but it's a
We put a
very
really,
strong,
we put an enormous amount of burden on the people who served on that committee earlier, and whatever help we can get for those folks who already busted their butts to try to figure something out, I think that would be great.
I think one of the ones that it's funny, Wayne, that was actually the first one I went to with that, because I was thinking, all right, we know this is coming, we know this is an issue. But the more that I was talked to Rebecca and other people on the board, I haven't talked yet as well. But, in thinking about how things went at the town meeting with MBTA, I feel like one of the things that we're missing here in the town in general is outreach, educating people. If people who are really, maybe if something affects them personally, or if they're just interested in the process, they come to these open forums, they come to the workshops. But if they don't, if they're driving kids, picking kids up, if they're getting home at 5 o'clock, running dinner on the table and taking kids to hockey practice, they don't have time. And so I feel like we need to figure out a way to reach people within the town. And so I actually really like the idea of outreach, because that could be used for Falls Corner, that could help us educate us on how we can do a better job of like, what we're doing in Falls Corner, what we're doing with the bylaws, what we're doing with MBTA. And so I wonder too, if that might actually touch on a couple things. But I don't know which would come first. Would it be better to wait to learn a little bit more about the MBTA before we do any impact analysis? Or do we do that now before we have more information? Or can we go for outreach and then this one, or go
I
together?
think I would go together and then, when I send the emails with the application, she said that we could debrief about the application after the deadline. And they can work with us on, or me, and then I could pass the information to you guys on, okay, well, we have this much funding, this is how far this will get you, and we can kind of negotiate between the two. And maybe we end up just going for one, but I think 2 and 3 are probably your best bet. But again, that's totally,
Well, let me weigh in if I could, for the last couple of months, because of my involvement with the MBTA Communities Working Group, I was contacted by the Council on Aging's Livable Duxbury Group, used to be called Aging Venture Friendly Task Force. And they, in addition to the Affordable Housing Trust, which I sit on as liaison, both of those groups have done a tremendous amount of work. We have a housing production plan that is now at the OHLC for comment and approval. So we're well on the way to completing step number one. Really, the last piece is what you have here, updating the master plan. So I'd actually encourage us to apply for that because it's very low hanging fruit. Relatively small grant could complete that work as an administrative act. Take it off your plate or
Number one,
Emily's plate, yeah. Because we could structure the proposal such that we can tell OCPC, the work is done. Here's the plan. Please just do the clerical work to update the plan.
Mhm.
How much could that possibly cost? And then our, master plan is in much better
Yeah,
position.
it's
and it
funny you say
cements
that.
together the
I
other.
asked how much that would cost me, but it could be up to 25,000, but if you're saying some of the work has already been done, I mean, have they actually taken what's in the master plan and updated it, or did they do something separate for the housing production plan based off the feedback they got from their forums?
Both.
So they did merge them.
Yes, I mean, everything that's in the HPP, everything that's in the Livable Duxbury plan is a currently updated version of the ideas that were inspired by it and placed in the original comprehensive plan. So, I mean, the work is essentially done in it. As I said, it's a clerical act to just make sure that the comprehensive plan reflects that in the housing domain. So I think we should do
And
that.
who did your master plan? Didn't MAPC do that?
Yeah.
I would actually suggest maybe continuing
Ask them instead of kicking it over to OCPC.
that.
You know what?
That's a good idea.
Maybe it's better to actually have the counterpoint with a different agency with a different perspective. I mean, that's one of the things that's unique about Duxbury is that we're one of maybe the only town that is a member of both the Metropolitan Area Planning Council and the Old Colony Planning Council, and they each approach from a different perspective. So.
Yeah.
And the thing about choosing one over the other is that there are synergies. These interact. I mean, setting aside Hall's Corner for the reasons Wayne mentioned, I don't see why you wouldn't want to do all three, because the impact analysis is great, but unless you have the outreach to deliver it to the people, no one's going to know.
Mhm.
You need all these things. And I would think it would be a stronger proposal, because it's going to actually get something done instead of just picking off, one thing or another thing.
They just don't have enough funding and we don't have any matching funds to look more attractive. So that's the other part of it is we don't, they're looking for matching too. And it's not that we can't get anything, but if we say, well, we want to do the impact analysis for MBTA, she indicated, that's kind of guaranteed because of how,
Yeah.
you
So I-
know, yeah, it's basically guaranteed. So, if we go crazy and then we're not willing to pony up a match, I don't see it as being as attractive.
How often do these come up? Is it like every 6 months?
DLTA is once a year. It's actually federal money that flows through to the RPAs all over the state. So every time I've worked in, I've filled these applications out and they're relatively easy. They'll give you something. And some regional planning agencies are stricter than others. I know here they're looking for specific categories.
Yeah.
I've worked in some places where they just sort of say, you can apply for whatever you want. You can't go over 25 grand. I think 25,000 is kind of like, I've heard that number tossed around a few times. They don't really come out and tell you that, but that's what I think is kind of the max for each community.
And you're gonna get this done by Friday and submit it.
Yeah, it's not been fun because we didn't meet the last month and I tried to do some research. I tried to sort of ask around, but the administration's so busy with, the town meeting coming up and I won't say the word, but what's coming at town meeting and then the holidays, obviously, being in the middle of the week like that, I mean, it just really kind of feel like people weren't here, including myself. I was also on vacation,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
here we are. So I'm gonna
So
fill the application
So the
out.
holidays override other issues.
Right, right.
How long will these holidays take?
put together?
To apply,
No, to complete the study, whatever it is, to complete it. So if we go for number 3, will it take a year and then we can apply for number 2?
you have to use the funds by the end of the calendar year. So, that's as aggressive as your administration and town planner are in communicating with OCPC to make sure that this project or projects go over the finish line.
Well, that's a question, and we don't really know what's happening with MBTA, right, as far as timelines. So we get money to use, do we?
But you've already done all the work to try to bring forth the bylaws. You have something to give to them to do an impact analysis. You have parcels that you chose, or if you want to choose different parcels for an impact analysis, you could do that too, because nothing's been voted on.
Well, the parcels were chosen in part based on the very specific guidelines that were promulgated that have subsequently been voided.
That's sort of what I was thinking, that what if we don't have to build, don't have to provide 15 units per acre, what if it's 8 units per acre? Would that change it? Would that change the impact analysis then?
Yeah.
I mean, as far as the what ifs, and I don't, conjecture is a losing game. It's very clear that the guidance is the guidance, and they're just gonna flip them over and issue them as emergency regulations without modification. So it's my understanding that the only way to get any relief in terms of the density is to propose some alternative, to come back with a counter, which is justifiable, still meets the goals set forth in regulation and legislation, but is tailored to the needs of our town. The reality of our town really is the issue, is that the guidance is unrealistic, and the resulting regulations will also be unrealistic.
My understanding, Wayne, I don't know if you've come across this in your litigation. The emergency regulations, according to my land use partners, are only valid for 3 months, and they're still susceptible to passing them via 30A.
Yeah, and they need a public hearing regardless.
Right. So while they may pass those emergency regulations, they may only be in place for 90 days, and then who knows what those regulations will end up. Ultimately, the final regulations will end up ultimately looking like.
And even if you pass them as currently drafted, all of the deadline dates that have been set aside make no sense anymore.
Right.
They said they were gonna do it this week. They haven't done it yet this week. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, in terms of the impact, it's regardless, that, the legislation is there, and we know that the initiative, it continues, that they've been wiring this in at the legislature into other activities of the state. So while there may be some retardation of that velocity, it's continuing. So the impact analysis will doubtless be necessary for the town to know how to act. So we can't really work without it. Regardless of all the variables floating out there, it's going to have an impact. We need to at least begin the process of assessing impact, because we were unable to do any of that work.
And that was the question
In the
that
work.
kept coming up over and over and over
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
All right, so it sounds like there are 3 that, Matt or Lauren, do you have any thoughts on the general or any preference for the 4th option?
I mean, I agree with where Tag was coming from. It'd be great to get the impact analysis. It's just a matter of don't throw good money over, after bad, because we just don't know what those final regulations are going to be. Maybe the impact analysis examines multiple different proposed density regulations so that we have a better idea, because I think it's a little short-sighted to focus on the impact on what was required under the now invalidated guidelines, regardless if they're passed on an emergency basis. We just don't know what those final regulations are going to be. So maybe the impact analysis looks at a few different alternatives, because I agree with you, Tag. It's very hard to go out to the public without having this impact analysis in our back pocket and having been completed.
Yeah, and maybe just the fact that it has the word MBTA community zoning is, we're focused on that as a threat or a distraction. And the fact of the matter is that we have these 40Bs coming up wherever there's land that can be developed at scale. So there are impacts that are occurring now that we don't understand and that we will now discover the consequences of going forward. So regardless of the variables with MBTA communities, an initiative to identify the impacts of various degrees of zoning in various regions of the town would be extremely useful to us in the planning context.
We can work with them on the scope. You know,
Yeah.
clear scope, you know. I think just getting the application in by the deadline, that's what she indicated to me,
Hmm.
and we can work out the details after.
Which ones, how many of these do we want, Rebecca to go for? Definitely, are we saying definitely the impact analysis?
Well, kind of implied that we need to pick
Okay.
one, focus.
Just pick one,
So-
okay.
I'd pick 1, 2 top, that would, because you don't have matching funds.
Can you tweak it to say, sort of impact analysis in relation to MBTA Communities Act? Work, because I think you can,
Yeah,
there is real synergy.
Oh, with the outreach, like, so
Yeah.
go for them both and say like, if you were.
Yeah, go for them both, but it's actually one ask.
yeah, no, we
Okay.
can do that.
For a project that hits a couple of points.
Yeah, I can say in the application, you know, with community outreach, you know, so it's directed towards MBTA,
Yeah.
so we'll just, yeah, we can do that.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
So then, Rebecca, in yours.
Yeah, fold as much into one ask as possible.
I think it's good. Could you see if, oh, wait, could you see if NIPC has any grants coming up and if maybe we could hit upon them for help with the strategic, the master plan?
All right, so I think Rebecca's gonna draft something and she's gotta get it in this week. My sense is that I would like to have her draft something and then I would vote to have you would tag approve it. And if you approved it, then she could submit it.
Is there a set of eyes? I mean, I'm happy if Rebecca just takes care of it, because
I have to have Rainey sign it anyway.
oh, you do, okay, all right, yeah.
Yeah, but,
Yeah,
I don't mind signing it, that's fine, but it has to be tomorrow, because tomorrow's the day that I planned on working on it, so as long as you can
Could you do that?
review it tomorrow.
Oh, I can turn it around,
Monday.
just, you know,
Okay, that'd be great. if
we'll
that
work
could
closely
work
with
on.
you.
Yeah, that's
Give-
fine.
Give me a time.
Okay.
And response window and I'll do it.
Okay. All right, that's, all right, next up, anything else anybody wants to talk about with the technical assistance? We're good? Okay. All right, next up, for discussion, planning steering group / village planning groups. Okay, I think this is.
Okay, now,
So Tig, I did not understand what you sent us.
yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, it was very inspired and perhaps opaque.
But you said there was more stuff that you were gonna pass out?
Well, this is the a more concise and clean iteration that's focused strictly on planning and really understanding our community's development pattern. The planning council idea, this is on the outreach side, it's similar to what's in the OCPC proposal, and it's a longer term objective. But this revolves, if you look at the second page there, around this image of the town. Political, if you will, subdivisions or administrative subdivisions that drill down a little bit into the historic development patterns and so many villages that represent those patterns. And this really was inspired by the 1944 map on the cover, which identified Gardnerville, which was a recognized community. There is a Gardner Road on East Street, but it was essentially obliterated by the construction of the Pilgrim Highway and the relocation of the South River and all of that. And there were some properties that burned down during the time, and the community was lost. And so what we struggle with as a town meeting town that likes to think of itself as a small town is that we aren't a small town. It's very difficult to reason about the needs of 5,000 households and 17,000 people. This allows us to focus a little bit more and understand the variety of neighborhoods and different situations in the town. And really essentially devolve that sort of community consensus building activity into a more focused area. Because when you have, for example, the exercise of MBTA of selecting sites, well, that site selection, we only were able to contact the property owners. There wasn't any outreach to the neighborhood, let alone the abutters. I mean, there's a whole area that's impacted by these larger scale projects. And so by defining these village boundaries and reasoning about the town in terms of villages, we can say, this project is in this village. All of these people should really be notified about this, but the whole town doesn't need to receive a notification about every project. It's an intermediate level between the almost anonymous level of interaction that we have with the town folk now and having to do everything one-on-one. We can't do it one-on-one. There are too many people. But we can't treat the whole town as a monolith and just say, well, the day and run ahead. That is proven not to work.
The thing that I've read the proposal a couple of times. The notion that you have 14 different villages and we were trying to get 5 to 9 people per village.
Not exactly.
I don't know what, that's what it seemed to
The
say.
steering group, the idea was that because the planning board is occupied with the business of the town, approving applications and the amount of effort that we have available to do this essential planning work is very limited. The outreach, the communication, planning director would do this. A full-time planning director would organize meetings and do, mailings to certain groups and things like that. We simply don't have that resource to get that work done, and we're floundering because of that.
Oh, so you're just talking about a group of, I thought you were talking about trying to get 70 people,
No. It's- I
5
think-
in every village.
So I don't know if I could use the whiteboard, but you have the select board, right? I mean, town meeting is that runs the town, and then the select board is in session throughout the year to ensure that, we're tracking what town meeting says, and of course, the town manager administers the town. And then the planning board is in this position of trying to effectuate planning. As you know, we used to supervise the planning director, and then that position was moved out to the town manager. And essentially, when that happened, it almost seems like the planning board lost the ability to plan, because it became, a position that was tasked by the town manager, and then we were just sort of having it go through the town manager to get to the plan. That's the way it looks to me, and I wasn't involved, when those transitions occurred. So with this proposal, with the planning steering group, is to establish another working group, a steering group, which is under the planning. So you still have town meeting, select board, planning board as a hierarchy. Below the planning board, you put a steering group. And that steering group interacts with the council, the villages. And the village may have, nobody steps up. All right, we just send mailings to the addressee. But we would present the opportunity in each village to self-organize, not as a body of town government, but as an organic local group, which is connected to town government through the steering group. And the steering group itself of 5 to 9 people would take the responsibility for collating the input from the village contacts, sending information, holding meetings with the village councils if there are people engaged and interested. So it would take years to cultivate these relationships between the steering group and the villages, but it would happen independent of the work that we have to do here on the planning and what the select board is occupied with. And it's an information conduit is what it is, because in lieu of this, what do we have? Facebook, Nextdoor, Telegram, private groups that are opaque, that include people who are in town and people from out of town. It's a very, very difficult information environment, and we're being buffeted by it. And I see the need to put some structure in place as a backstop against all of that disinformation and distortions blowing around all the time. I mean, we talk about it all the time in different meetings, should we go on Facebook? Should we get into this and go wade into those debates? And the general consensus is it's a quagmire, and you're just going to lose your mind if you try to do that. So we don't, and we leave it to the wolves. And it's hurting us. So I'm just looking for some way to get a clean channel from the centralized government here out into the villages of the town.
So from a planning perspective, the planning board administers the subdivision law. And the subdivision law isn't going to change village to village to village. The planning board is asked to provide amendments to the zoning bylaw. And at least as presently drafted, the zoning bylaw in almost all of the town has a residential compatibility district that doesn't change, well, it doesn't change, the RC district doesn't change no matter where you are in this town.
Correct.
It doesn't make any difference what village you're in. And in fact, that some of these places were developed much more densely in the beginning is irrelevant because they're just pre-existing non-conforming. But just in terms of the principal things that this board does, neither of those functions, at least as currently drafted, the subdivision control laws are going to change.
Yeah.
There might be some aspects of on a village by village basis where the zoning bylaw might be subject to tweaking, but by and large, the regulatory regime that surrounds these villages is monolithic. Yeah. So I'm wondering about what role they would actually fulfill that's within the planning board's aegis.
It's the responsibility for midwifing bylaw changes. That's
Yeah.
really it.
Yeah.
The whole point is to be able to, and this is what I use the acronym RFC, request for comments. This is the well-established practice. This is for engineering. When there is a proposal for change, in order to ensure that it's being considered and we're getting feedback on it, it's issued with a request for comments.
Yeah.
And even specific questions, you can form a survey or what have you. And so the opportunity is presented at the village level for comments, and then they're compiled at the village level. See, it's an intermediate aggregation point so that we can reason about it and understand the distinctions between the needs of the various parts of the town, because they are different. And the one size fits all bylaws is create friction.
It 100% is creating friction. There's friction with respect to pre-existing properties that are on very, very small lots that want to make necessary changes, many of which to deal with climate change. But yeah, I just wanted to try to understand it. I know that you threw it out, you put this out in part to have a discussion about it.
Yeah.
So
The long-term prospect of trying to get a good.
I wanted to just give you my,
Yeah,
because I thought it was really thoughtful and I read it closely and I wanted to make sure that I understood it.
there's a lot missing from it now. I'm sorry about that.
I was very, very thoughtful and very long-term thinking. And it almost seems like in some ways you're trying to answer that, how do we outreach question? How do we bring people into the business? How do you create two-way communication? That's kind of what I'm hearing. How do we create two-way communication?
The idea of the council.
I was deeply concerned we were going to need 90 volunteers.
Yeah.
I actually thought that in the last meeting. I was like, who's taking all the minutes for these?
Oh.
meetings?
Steering group would require administrative support, but stop.
What would happen if you got volunteers for say PowerPoint, but not West Duxbury? So you're almost putting them against each other at that point.
No, because the steering group is responsible for collating and ensuring that somebody in that neighborhood is engaged in communicating. If that's a problem, then you make sure the steering group members are recruited from this. But again, that's really long term. And I present you with this second document. It's not about planning groups. It's about land use. It's reference for later consideration, you can review, but it shows you where we stand. in terms of these same villages, because it's just a mechanism to reason about the town and understand the town better.
I found it fascinating. I really did. My first thought was, have you thought about going and getting a map? Do you have a master's in land use planning? Have you thought about that? You could be a city planner. I love the table on the very back, because it's illuminating. I think to show where do we have condominiums, where are apartments, ADUs. I just thought that was really
Yeah.
interesting.
I've heard tell over the years that Duxbury is fully built. Where is the available? And there is no available. Now, of course, this data is done from the state level. It does not really take into account local conditions. So it's fuzzy. You can't rely on it as, it's not down to the number of individual digit, but it's an overview. And so you do see where there are villages that are maxed out, wholly single family, and then there are others where they're still single.
And quite frankly, I don't think after the new ADU law that Duxbury is maxed out.
At this point, correct.
Because the new ADU law not only permits rental units as of right, what it also does is it revives existing lots that would have otherwise merged. So there were pre-existing non-conforming lots that, if were in the same level of ownership,
Right.
were deemed to have merged as a matter of law. Therefore, that they were no longer pre-existing non-conforming. The sophisticated developers in this town will be looking at which of these lots have in fact merged, because that merger has been undone under the new ADU law. So if you had a pre-existing non-conforming lot, and just because you had two that were next to each other, you still have a buildable lot under the new law. And I think that the notion that we're fully built out is likely wrong.
It's been invalidated.
Yes.
But do we have any action items on this for you, Tag? Do you want us to think about it, talk about it? Do you want to continue this?
Well, in terms of the status of it, all right, as you know from the initial draft, I had thrown it together in November with the idea that we could pass it at town meeting, and I floated that idea with Blackwell, and summarily rejected. The town manager suggested we talk to the select board. I've given it to 2 select board members and received 0 feedback, so. As far as,
I thought you were throwing it out for feedback.
Mhm.
The one piece of feedback that I would suggest is that I think 14 villages is too much. That yes, there are distinctive aspects of these areas that are geographically distinctive, but not in any material way developmentally distinctive in the manner in which they've been developed. For instance, I do think that there are some real similarities around the very small lots that were built as summer homes, that were along the water, that differs from what the rest of the residential compatibility bylaw ought to read. But I think that 14 is too many distinctions. That's just that was my gut.
Yeah, no, I think, I agree with what you're saying in terms of the development profile and any of these characteristics. Yeah, it's not that granular. This is more about the communication, I think, at that level. Thanks.
But there's everything, I will tell you, every aspect of what you call the Webster Island Village is subject to, in almost every instance, they come as pre-existing non-conforming in order to build anything. Because all these lots are very small seaside lots. That's equally true around lots of the roads that lie east of Washington Street. Standish, no, there are bigger lots than Standish, but but all those little side roads that go down towards the water east of Washington Street, all of those have lots and lots of smaller lots that require a special zoning consideration because they're pre-existing non-conforming. And there's a whole bunch of those that have very similar characteristics that I think you could draw a reasonable overlay district around and then actually distinguish in the bylaw between lots within the overlay district and lots that weren't within the overlay district. But from a developmental perspective, I don't see a material difference in quite frankly, most of the inland lots. At least in, like, I don't know why, the Gardnerville village would have different needs than the North Duxbury village. I just can't envision it. But those are my 2 cents.
Maybe broken down more to like 8.
Well, sure, I mean, it's a question of what the purpose is. If you're trying to just simply catalog the variety of development profiles, there are fewer, absolutely.
But as far as I was thinking, maybe making it more manageable.
Mm.
inside.
Well, it's a conversation, and I'm
Yeah.
hoping that people will weigh in and say, this makes no sense, or is this how it's really split into 3? I mean, we go the other way. But fewer would be simpler, yes, that's right.
Yeah, I don't, my view is not that it makes no sense, but that I think it can be streamlined a little and to make even more sense.
Sharon,
Can you keep it as an agenda item or keep it on?
Well, I think we have,
Well,
work in
just keep it on
progress,
the agenda and we keep
Right.
continuing to talk about it.
Hmm.
Yeah, are you gonna still try to get it to town meeting? No.
no, there's enough to work. But if we don't have a planner a year from now, I think it's gonna become urgent.
Yeah, I think you're right. Right.
let's don't.
Nah.
All right, next up, committee liaison reports. I actually asked Emily to add this, and this was just because we typically sign up to liaise to different committees. And I thought since we're going to be down in Scott, we might want to kind of look at what we're doing. He was our representative to the zoning bylaw group. I would like to be on that. I'm gonna guess you would like to be on that way, although you're already on
Nope.
that.
I don't need to be on it.
You don't.
Right.
You want that to be a priority, that you don't want.
Judy Barrett is on,
Okay.
and Judy Barrett is the most knowledgeable planner that I know, end of story.
Okay.
And I think that Judy Barrett's input is invaluable.
Okay.
And I think, quite frankly, what she would do and what I would do would be duplicative, because there's almost no situation where I'm going to disagree.
Is everybody happy with the group they're liaising with, the committee that they're doing?
I'm not.
You're not. Okay, what would you like?
Give me the option. I'm on the MIPC and there's a meeting today for a meet and greet kind of thing. And I think most of them, today was on Zoom, but most of them are in person in Boston. I can't do
Yeah,
that.
that's too far. I had to say this year when I was on.
Do you want to do open space? I'll do MAPC.
Sure.
Yeah, let's just swap,
Well, okay, okay. Awesome. Cool.
because that'll be easier for me.
And then, Matt?
I've been on the sidewalk and bike path committee,
Yeah,
which is fine.
Matt, you were on mute. We didn't hear you.
Oh, you didn't hear me? I said, I've been on the sidewalk and bike path committee, which is still progressing. We just had another meeting. We took a little break around the holidays, and so we just met for the first time last week. So we are waiting for our grant submission or response on the $500,000 grant submission that was done at the end of the year.
Any idea when that response is expected?
Outside the context of the MBTA recent vote, I think there was a high confidence that it was going to be approved, and now it is more indeterminate.
Okay. Well, back up at you.
Yep, the Housing Trust is going gangbusters, as I mentioned. And as a jump to that, as I mentioned, the LD Livable Duxbury Group, I have to share with you that there's pretty high degree of frustration and discouragement. You know, our ability to make headway in our communications, so that's coming through. But there's high hopes that the production plan will be approved by HLC, and that will put us in a better position. So I think, as I mentioned before, I'd like to see I'd like to do a better job as a conduit between the two. And I always ask, you know, what do you have that you'd like me to bring to the housing? And that's well, you should bring here, and they say, help us make the bylaw changes, help us do 40Y, help us find ways to get, you know, we're kicking around different terms. What do you call it? Workforce housing, entry level housing, you know, achievable housing. Because it's not about affordable housing, not about subsidized housing. Those are losers in this town. We need them. They're extremely difficult. But we do need more modest cottage. I mean, that's the word that keeps coming back, cottage type.
Yeah.
And so we had the conversation today about, well, the barrier is always septic. It's always septic. You know, you want to put, you know, quarter-acre lots with a house and an ADU. Where's the waste going to go? We need an answer to somehow have shared infrastructure to achieve the desired entry-level housing, affordable housing.
Well,
without
that's
just
one of the
ruining
principal
lives.
issues around anytime they talk about the redevelopment at Hall's Corner.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you do with the wastewater?
Yeah.
And quite frankly, that's Nancy's in charge.
Thank you for talking.
It's a tough one.
Has the town thought about an official wastewater plant or managing this at a larger scale?
Well, the way it was explained to me this morning is that it falls under the water department. So the water department is focused on the water system. And the septics, there are 4 or 5 of these shared septic systems, and they've been coasting along for years, gradually losing steam, and when something happens, they do a quick patch to make sure it keeps sliding, and it's another one of those things that's it's gonna come around and bite us.
But the one by the high school is underutilized.
And the one on Bay Road is over.
Yeah,
That one's full. Yeah.
And
How about the Snug Harbor one?
What about
Is that one in good shape? Is that-
As far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
and there's a need for something in Millbrook because they're in dire straits there.
well, they got to hook up to I think, frankly, they've got to figure out how to hook up to the high school one.
Well, can we help make that happen as a planning board?
I think we've heard from, the developer Millbrook who's talked about that.
You have one? Did he come to us?
News to me.
Mike Giuliano?
Did he come here and said, can you please make me a?
No, he hasn't specifically made a request, but there's certainly discussion around that. There was also discussion around it because there's a 40B going up on the end of Railroad Ave eventually.
Yeah.
And that 40B would very much like to be part of that project.
Yeah.
Why don't they apply for a MassWorks grant, do a public-private partnership? They should do. And then the town can benefit off of it and the 40B. But I don't know if there's been feasibility studies done.
Yeah, no.
You would apply for a MassWorks grant.
No, the town would apply for it because they're the public entity, but they would bring in the private partnership, the developer into it. Developer would put up some of the match. Or however you want to do it, I'm just giving a scenario, the developer would put up some of the match.
Okay.
And then we could do like in-kind match, so we wouldn't have to come up with money. And then it would be a pretty attractive application for infrastructure because it creates housing and it benefits the town. That's just the
But-
idea.
But this started with Tag's comment that it all comes down to wastewater and
Yeah, so
A grant application wouldn't look good unless you had some type of a feasibility study or drawing or. But you could also apply for a planning grant to get the drawing. Yeah. Seen it working on the town.
what's the status on the 40B that they wanted They wanted PEP, right?
Yeah, yeah, so conservation denied it. They determined that the stream was perennial.
Right.
So it had a bigger buffer zone than if it was determined to be intermittent, which was the developer's intention.
Mhm.
So then they, filed for some proceeding orders with DEP, and we had a site visit, and, DEP sided with,
The
not
developer.
much, yeah.
Yeah.
Which we thought might happen. There were several other projects that Concom didn't question the stream status. So we thought it would go that way. So I wasn't surprised, but I can say that the commission did do as much as they could. You know, they tried, and DEP determined that it was intermittent. I don't know what, we issued orders in October.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kristen, I just want to ask a clarifying question. You're going to be on the zoning codification, you're going to be the liaison, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm still on coastal resiliency, so if somebody wants to do that, they usually meet Mondays twice a month, but they might go twice a month, they might go to once.
Do you want to be really into that?
If somebody wanted to pick it up, it's really interesting. Part of the issue is that we have all these great ideas, but we have no teeth, we have no resources. And so it's a lot of kind of spinning our wheels, a lot of the same conversations. I think, and we have Woods Hole. If we come up with ideas, they can apply for grants and they could actually do the work. So our chair, who is fabulous, actually just moved out of state. So that's the other thing, they're kind of chair right now. If anybody decides they'd like to do that, great.
Who was it?
It's cultural resiliency.
Yeah, but
Task Force.
who was the chair?
David,
Hammer,
Amory.
Oh, yeah.
It was excellent.
Yeah.
Good job.
he still can, but
He does?
from me.
Yeah. He was very, very talented. Yeah. All right, moving on, I guess we'll head over to discussion planning board goal setting. I know it's late, we've had a long night. But there were just a couple of things I wanted to point out. This kind of I was going to mention this open before, I forgot. We do have elections coming up. Matt has thankfully agreed to, he's taken out papers again. So Matt filled somebody's one-year term. So he has to run again, and then his term will be when he runs, it will be for a 5-year term. And then because Scott left, we also have another position open. I don't know if anybody else has taken out papers.
I intend to.
Okay.
Steve Gant, 265 West Street. I do plan to take out every stuff.
Great, thank you. We all know Steve from working on the MBTA. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
So obviously we've got the elections coming up. But I do think it would be helpful, we talked about some goal setting. I know Wayne, you've mentioned multiple times about the zoning. I also feel like that would be, I guess this board has talked, when I came on here 4 years ago, the plan was we were going to go like the next town meeting. It's been 4 years and we haven't done that. We haven't finished recodifying them. So I think if we could employ perhaps some program management, strategies. We said, okay, if we wanted to go to town planning, you could go to town meeting in 2026 or in the fall of 2025. We could kind of work back and kind of maybe hopefully come up with a plan of how we could actually get there. But I need to be on this committee to figure out what's going on, where they're going, what the direction is. So I thought it would be helpful. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but it would be helpful if we kind of think about like, what do we want to do while we have a planner, while we don't have a planner, well, hopefully we have a long-term, planner at some point. What are the things that we would like to do as a board? So maybe we just could throw out like, what do you think your top 1 or 2 items are? And then we can follow up the next time. Maybe if we just say like, these 2 things are the most important, and then we can regroup in 2 weeks.
Does everybody want to just kind of, sorry to interrupt you, send them in writing? You can think about them, and then we can compile them and do a list for the next meeting. Does that work?
Right.
Sounds great.
Great way to do that.
So whether you guys have time to think about it
And give us a chance to adjourn.
and we can leave.
Yeah.
Great.
It has a lot to do with I'm supposed to cook dinner.
Bye.
All right, any other, is everybody on board with that idea?
Sure, I just want to throw out there that I've spoken with Ed Mayo about the zoning recodification working group, and I think that the number one goal in terms of that is to evince closer supervision and prod them to move
Okay.
through the work because it is not
Moving.
proceeding, in my understanding.
And we'll talk more about.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
I was at the last meeting and we did make progress. They're coming out, like they've taken, part of it was that Chris Ryan had some edits. There was all these random documents, so they've all come together. She's creating one master draft, that she'll have ready for us. And so like, I feel like that's a good thing because I've been lost based off the random drafts. I know, Jim Wodlewski's been lost about it. We've all been confused, and because of that, it's, and no one's in charge of that main document. So we've established now who's in charge of it, and you're not allowed to touch it. Kind of like what I was doing with the MBTA, like don't touch this document, you know?
Yep.
We've now started that with the recodification, so, I think it'll get better after that next draft comes out.
One more thing in terms of goals. It's my understanding that our top priority is the ADU, to deal with that. And I understand there is some language that we're supposed to do something about at the next meeting. Is
There'll
it
be a
available-
draft.
Is it
It's gonna be-
available now?
There's gonna be a draft.
When?
She sent it today. I haven't read it yet.
Can you send it around? Because I need time.
It
Can't
just
get
came
it.
today,
I
Dad.
know, yeah, can you just immediately?
Well, it just came today and I haven't opened the email. You'll get it.
That would be wonderful. Yes.
Sue's gonna work on ADU and one other one.
Oh, the cluster zoning? Haven't gotten a draft for that yet.
ICC.
I just.
Inclusionary.
Thank you.
Yeah, inclusionary, that's what I
Together.
meant, not cluster,
Yeah.
inclusionary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the cluster is part of that, yeah.
That's, and maybe Wayne can correct me if I'm wrong. They're just reviewing and revising that. There's currently already an inclusionary zoning bylaw, so
Pretty minor.
they're just revising it. And they've, been meeting with all the individual department heads to get their feedback. And I think they've rounded that up before the holidays, so I'm only just, I had her send them an email prodding them too, but we don't have a draft of that.
Sorry for my impatience.
You're definitely not. You'll get it.
Definitely not really sorry.
No one is sorry.
Yes,
Are there any zoning bylaws being proposed to be voted on in the town meeting this year?
not this year.
So the work that's being done will mostly, if anything comes of it, it'll be next year's.
What?
Yeah.
Aren't we gonna vote on some sort of revision to the general rules?
I think there's nothing for
Or,
March.
okay.
I haven't seen them. They were closing.
I suspect there'll be a November meeting, there usually is, so. I have the goal to come shoot for,
See how it goes.
but I think we would need a lot of outreach. We will need outreach, a lot of outreach on June. Anybody else have any questions? Steve, you're here. Do you have any questions? You've been patient. I just want you to know, this is an unusually long meeting. We had actually a very long agenda. Very unusual.
Kristen, I know long meetings.
Okay.
Yes, I put my people through it, yes,
Okay.
unfairly. So, nothing other than, what we've already talked about, other than say, Matt, if you're still looking for signatures, I insist on signing your papers.
What's that, Steve? Sorry, I didn't quite hear you.
You and Matt.
He said thank you.
Okay.
Delay.
Could I move to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you all. Roll call. Oh, yeah, roll call.
I
I'm not gonna ask for discussion.